Welcome to another episode of the Ultimate MBA podcast. Whoever are listening to us, today we have Abhijeet Ray with us, a marketing legend across the Southeast Asia and now in Canada. I won't introduce him myself, but I'll let him introduce himself because it's way too long for me to remember. Abhijeet, over to you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, happy to just talk about myself for a change. I usually talking about my clients. So I'm in the advertising business. Yeah, so I was actually I'm a Delhiite, so born and brought up in Delhi. Did my schooling, colleging, and right after University of Delhi, where I did a bachelor's in economics, uh, I ended up in Ghaziabad to do the PGDBM. Post that, it has been a roller coaster ride because I'm not one of those people who have been placed. I never took the placement that the campus offered me. Just did things on my own, pretty much. Nine out of 10 jobs is for me calling up the CEO and getting myself a job. So I'm a little bit like that. So to cut a long story short, started out with a company called Diners International, Diners Club, essentially. They got
Okay,
bought out.
the credit card, you have Diners Club credit card, right?
Yeah, they got bought out by Citicorp
Okay.
eventually. So that's where I cut my teeth. I was a management trainee. That's where everything. So what happens after PGDBM happened to me in Diners. Ended up becoming a marketing exec, but I got a little bored of it all. But what the silver lining was, I was meeting with the ad agency. Happened to be Lintas those days.
Okay.
I was based in Mumbai, so it intrigued me a lot about what these guys do. I was fascinated with the creative process. I was even more fascinated with the media guys because they got to spend crores and crores of money, rupees, uh, to plan and buy media. So that intrigued me, and I was interested to figure out how to plan a career in media. And essentially, that's really the introduction to advertising. Because after that, I joined an agency in Delhi, and they moved me to Mumbai for a while. And since then, I have moved around. I've worked in agencies in
So
Southeast Asia.
what year did you do your MBA?
Yeah, so that'll be a huge shock for most of your viewers. Uh, so I am 1984 batch. Uh,
Most of people who are listening this would not have even, mm, you know, like half of my
Most of the
listener
people listening
are
in are,
third.
are, are
Yeah.
younger than my kids.
So what was the last role that you did before moving to Canada?
So one of the last things I did was a little different in the sense that I joined an ex-client of mine to become their CMO. This was a hospitality group based out of Thailand because
Okay.
that was my last job, and then I'm immigrated to to
You
Canada.
were CMO of a hospitality group before you moved to
Yes,
Canada.
yes, correct.
And what was
And
the
and
typical size of that group? Like what's
yeah,
revenue wise?
it's a uh, revenues and all. I don't remember too much, but it was one of those. It's a if anybody's been to Bangkok, they would recognize a name called Labua. And
Okay.
Labua is kind of a 65th floor restaurant. Is legendary. It's got a sky bar, which I believe is called Sirocco, but it's legendary. And that hotel became even more legendary because Hangover Part Two was shot there, and
So
so
we
it
can
was like
easily say that it was more like Jumeirah of Bangkok, so to say,
sort of. It's
sort of.
it's got classic fine dining. It's got even more luxurious now.
So a little bit of context to the viewers who are listening to this. Uh, Abhijeet came to Canada when he was chief marketing officer of a major luxury hotel or hospitality group out of Bangkok. And he came to Canada at the age of 53, Abhijeet.
Yeah, I had just turned 51 actually. Yeah.
51, okay, minus two. So Abhijeet, at when people have so much struggle moving to Canada even at young age, what motivated you to move to Canada at the age of 51, leaving like a luxurious lifestyle back? in Bangkok?
Yeah, as you can imagine, I've finished a decade here, Sachin. So what happens is I do get asked this question a lot, particularly from migrants, right? I call them migrants, but essentially new immigrants, and they're very keen to understand as to why I would take that such a decision. So I would just say, I just told somebody the other day that I have this book in my mind, and I think I want to write it one day. And it's really the life I've led and my career, and it's not about how to do things properly, but how I've moved like from one to the other uh, because of certain accidents. I call them accidents. So so the name of the notional working title in my name in my brain is it's called the accidental immigrant because
Oh,
there was no plan. Canada was the last place I wanted to migrate to. So here's the story, and I'll try to keep it short. So I was at this party in Jakarta, where I
okay.
was the chief strategy officer at Ogilvy. I was working with Ogilvy, and this party was all good friends. They were all CEOs, CFOs. They were all Indian expats, and it was a good close knit, group. And I just happened to uh, land up a little late. I saw the men were hanging around near the bar, so I went there, and they were talking about Canada, 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 and immigration. So since I was late to the conversation, I said, "Hey guys, what's going on? Like, what is this about Canada?" So one of them looks at me and says, "अरे यार इसको तो बताया ही नहीं. हम तो सब कनाडा जा रहे हैं." I said, "What do you mean?" नहीं नहीं हमने apply कर दिया. And so that was the first time I had even the name Canada came into my brain. Otherwise, we only think of people coming out of straight from Pind, plane loads of people going straight
Yeah.
to Brampton. That was my notion of Canada. I had no other appreciation for the country.
And this was in
So,
year 2010,
2004.
11? 4, okay.
This is four. And so basically, the conversation, I learned that people were getting the immigration because it was like a second, like a backup.
Okay.
Uh, So there were like maybe four or five of them who had applied, and all of us were about the same age group, and our kids were about the same age group. They were all in sort of elementary school and stuff. So the idea was, ठीक है, like we've had a decent lifestyle, good for the kids. They like a good education, and it's a fallback option. And some people said, yeah, maybe we'll go to retire in India, but then many people have two homes, right? They spend the winters in India and summers in Canada. So all these are like the grand plans, like कैसे रिटायर करेंगे ये वो.
Yeah.
Before I knew it, like the next, like one guy gave me the lawyers, so everybody was using the same lawyer, and
Okay.
somebody texted me or emailed me the link. The next thing is I've applied. Of course, I filled in forms, and in the year 2004 there was no such thing as express entry and all these things. There was only one skilled, federal skilled, and
Okay.
then your name goes into thousands and thousands of backlog, and then I got a call. Let me ask you the question: when do you think I got the call? How many months, years later?
So you applied in 2004
Yeah.
and you came here in 2013. So
So you're
mathematically around
not doing the math.
2008, 9. Yeah.
You're doing the math. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 5 years later. Exactly.
So
Exactly.
you applied in 2004 in Canada PR process. You got a call 5 years later.
Correct. And it was normal because there was no sort of express. I was not in a rush, and
Yeah.
even though we got the call and we got the PR, we were both, my wife and myself, were a bit of a shock. We say, अब क्या करना है? Like
Did you not forget about the whole PR thing because it was
we did,
already,
we did, we did. So that's the joke. So for 4 years, we completely forgot. We paid the fee to the lawyer and said, well, whatever, he will do whatever it takes. I was actually cleaning out my Gmail where there was some 20, 30,000 junk mail, like I was cleaning up, and I suddenly saw the lawyer's name pop up, old email. And I said, what the hell happened here? I paid these guys a lot of money, so let me just ask. And that's what I did. And Next thing I knew was they were saying, "Oh, Mr. Ray, thanks for contacting us. Your file has now moving." I said, "That's great. So what do you want to do?" He said, "We are sorry to tell you, but we need to just update the file. So are you still in Jakarta, and is this where you work?" I said, "No. Firstly, I have moved countries. I've changed 3 jobs since then, and this is not great to hear that I have to fill these up." They said, "No, I just fill them up." And the strangest part was they said, "But you need to, one of the things you did not answer when you originally applied was a police verification from every country you lived in." So I told them, "You must be joking." like like I had probably stayed in 6 or 7 countries where, and I tell you, Sachin, it was just madness. For the next 15 days, I was running pillar to post,
You
trying to get
kept applying to all the police
all of
certifications
them,
and all of
all of them.
that.
Let me ask you, which country do you think was the easiest to get?
India.
Yes. You know why? It's simple. I went
Gandhi
there and
ji.
they said, "Yeah, kal le lena chithi." I said, "Why?" I mean, I was asking them, "Why do you want to give it like so quickly?" He said, "नहीं नहीं, आपके पास Indian passport है." So that's verification. So in many senses, India is so cool that we're like there. If you are an Indian, if you have Indian passport, you are verified. So I was like thrilled. I mean, India, I thought would be nightmare, and got to pull strings, this and that. So
Yep. So toughest one to get the PCC, police clearance. Which country?
yeah, so strangely enough, it was Malaysia. I didn't mention Malaysia, by the way. I did end up living there for 2 years because they are a very strict sort of country. It's a very bureaucratic, and uh, when I went to the embassy, they said, "No, you have to contact your employers, and they will help you get it because your relationship with that country is through the people who hired you." It's a little. I mean, things may have changed now. So one of the miraculous things that happened at that point in time was I had still stored the phone number of the CEO of
Okay.
the agency. Not the agency, actually, it was a media company. Actually, they had a presence in India. They originally called Maxis, and in India, I think they were called was it Aircel or something?
Are they the same company that ended up in 2G scam, Aircel Maxis?
Exactly. They were in a like real deep shit. They were such a prestigious company in Malaysia. They launched the country's first satellite-driven television, which is where I was. Then they went into India, and then they got into the telco space. They had this brand called Maxis in Malaysia. I had long left them by then, so their folks in India got into a lot of trouble. I read about it later. So anyway, so luckily for me, the CEO of that the company was still on my speed dial, and I called him, and it was just my luck because no CEOs pick up random phone calls. He probably saw my name and he was like intrigued. Isko kya ho gaya? Because it had been almost 10 or 15 years, and he was driving somewhere. He was being driven somewhere, and I said, "I need some help, and only you can help me." So he started laughing. He says, "What have you done?" First question. What have you done? Are you here? I said, no. I'm not there. I'm still in Bangkok, but I need a police clearance. I've got a Canadian PR. Um, he said, you know how CEOs are, especially people who kind of know pretty much everybody from the prime minister to anybody you need to know. He said, "Oh, okay, no problem. Why don't you call X, Y, and Z? He's our corporate affairs guy. Um, and he's the world's biggest fixer. He'll fix it." I said, "I don't need any fixing, sir. I need a
I
police
just need a little
clearance."
police certificate. That's it.
He said, "Yeah, that's what I mean. Just call him." And believe you me, Sachin, it's like if you have connections in high places, and I am a firm believer that these things work. In about maybe 3 days flat, I had the letter.
Okay.
And that was it. That was the toughest one, but in a sense, it was easy because, as it turned out, there were people willing to help me. So I must have been a good employee.
Yeah. So PCC and all is done. Now, when you move to Canada, and I think you moved to Canada in 2013, right? Leaving the job of
That's
a
right.
CMO of a major company.
Yeah.
Why did you actually move?
Yeah, so that's what I was talking about being an accidental immigrant, and
Yeah.
it's funny how these things happen because the party in Jakarta was a pure accident. I mean, I was there the
Yeah.
right place, right time. Or flip side, happened to be the worst place at the worst time. I was advised to pick up the PR, got the PR. So we had a choice, and to be perfectly honest, for 3 years we sat on it. We didn't move, and when it was running out, then me and my wife sat down and said, like, we gotta take a call, and the call we took was not to come initially.
Okay.
Yeah, because it was like, why the hell would we do this to ourselves, right? Then two things happened, then reality sets in. So my older kid was about to go to university, and she had just finished high school. So she would have come to Canada anyway because she had a PR. She would pay one third the tuition of international students. And it's actually a joke because we realized that we were moving because of her. She was moving, and we said, "Chal sab chalte hain, and dekha jayega." Like we'll figure it out. So really, to be honest, not too much. I didn't have a job on hand, and I know your next question. I'm kind of guessing, but I ended up with nothing on hand, no ready jobs. So we took a huge risk.
And you are not accidental immigrant. You are also unlikely immigrant. Like very unlike
I,
or
I like
someone like
I like that title actually. I like that the description.
yeah,
It's a more apt, but there is a series of accidents that happen. I
yeah.
mean, accidents is a strong word, but there is this. You could be making a lot of plans, but things happen in your life which take you in another direction. Sometimes.
Totally. You can make n number of plans.
Correct.
Same happened with me. Like I was planning to move somewhere else or otherwise, and my employer pings me that, okay, do you want to move to Canada? There's a role open. Like, okay, why not?
There you go. You never know. You never know
Yeah.
where you end up. Yeah. So anyhow, I'm kind of anticipate your next question, but I'm going to
Let me ask it. I
you
want to
ask it.
ask, yeah, I want to ask you. So you were the CMO of a major company in Southeast Asia with all the perks that are there.
Yeah.
Why the hell would someone leave that and come to Canada and be unemployed?
Yeah.
And and how much pay cut did you take after your first job?
Yeah. Uh, all great questions. I think I'll start with the last one first because that's the most dramatic thing change that happens. So in my case, we're talking about myself. So some people get a job or get a transfer. The jump or the reduction is never that huge. But for me, I came without a job. You remember that scenario, and
Yeah,
then for almost 4 or 5 months, I was basically doing some odd things like some consulting here and there, and then when I get my first assignment, which is obviously I will count that as the first paycheck, and I have to compare that with what I left behind. I would say it was almost like a 1/5 or 1/6 in terms of the package. It's not even a package. It was just like a consultant. You just charge for the hours you work, right? But then that is it. That was the math because I had to make uh, do with that and run the household with that. So
and it's in
that's
absolute
yeah.
terms. It's not even PPP that your Thai baht is will be priced much more because you can get
No,
a lot of
all
benefit.
converted to USD or everything
Yeah,
converted to USD, same currency. Yeah, so it's massive. But I would like to say that anyone listening in as well, I think the sooner you realize that some of the trappings of being an expat is to keep you happy and motivated, they're really not sort of essential benefits, I would say. And what do I mean by that? I'll just randomly take a couple of examples. So both
So
my
the
kids are
benefit that you're talking about, like just to clarify to people, the benefit that Abhijit is talking about is that when he was in Bangkok as an expat, the company would provide him a lot of benefits outside his salary, not just the salary, but you know,
it's the cost to,
accommodation.
yeah,
Yeah,
CTC, the cost to company. Cost to company is after all hitting the P&L, right? So
yeah.
everything adds up. So forget about things like the simpler stuff like car and fancy condo and the rent. One of the more life-changing, I would say, realizations that happens is when you come to a place where you start from scratch, you build from scratch, right? You're building from scratch, and you almost think that okay, there is no keeping up with the Joneses. I don't have to live in Malabar Hill. I don't have to live in South Delhi, right? I don't have to keep up with the Joneses out, right? Don't have to drive a fancy car. I have the TTC. I have the Go Transit, right? You find people like yourself who are professionals who've done well, who are starting from scratch as well, or have made that adjustment, and they're happy. And then you realize why they are happy. They take these nice drives and see the fall colors. They go across the border and visit relatives. It's a different beat, a different life. Right?
So one thing that you mentioned that it's you feel nice about the fall colors and the drive that you take out, or you go across the border. I often say this one thing about Canada, uh, that you can just step outside your home and get into a painting. It's so beautiful.
True, very true, very true. I agree with you.
I think sometimes it's nice to, when you're immigrated to a totally new country, you need to appreciate good things about it to not feel post-purchase dissonance. Otherwise, you'll
Yeah,
always do the math in your head.
yeah. The math is a killer, by the way. I know people who migrated 5 years ago and they're still doing the math in their head. They're converting, and I. So the two things you can do, you can either have a chat with them and say, "Boss, you're gonna die doing this," or you gotta tell them like, if you're really so concerned, have you considered just moving back? I mean, seriously, I mean, and people do move back, right? I mean, it's not unheard of because there's no point in just staying here and being miserable and making everyone else miserable around you because you're constantly complaining. ये नहीं हुआ, वो नहीं हुआ, ये नहीं. It's like, okay, so you have to advise them कि you please leave or you please stop whining and moaning because it's not helping. You're not helping your kids. You're not helping your wife. And by the way, we are getting a little bored. Right?
Yeah, I mean, totally agree. That outlook change is necessary because a lot of time we think that our whining can address macro issues. They won't.
Yeah,
We can only handle micro issues. That's it.
yeah, and I sometimes feel that like I've now hit my 60s, right? So I can say this because you expect somebody in the 60s to start getting a little philosophical. So I would actually say that in the end, I mean, it is true. Like I'm not a religious person, but I do think there's so much in our way of life, which is called Hinduism, right? One of them is सब कुछ माया है. It is. It's everything is an illusion, and then you realize that you realize that what were you fighting for? What was it that you were really? And some people say rationalize it by saying, "Arey, for the kids, I want to put money away." Ye, wo." But why? Why? Like what? What after that? What is next? What is next? How rich you want to be? And then the day you realize that wealth is not where it is, the happiness is. For some people it is. They want to own a cricket league. That's fine. They want to drive fancy cars. They want to go to the space. That's fine. different benchmarks for people in terms of enjoying their wealth. But and they should, because they've worked hard for it. Sooner or later, all of them will come to the conclusion, okay, what's next, right? So I think the sooner you come to the conclusion that, okay, you know what, there is a lot more to it if I wanted to, or I could slow down, or I could be content with what I have, and try to enjoy what I have. I know I'm getting a little philosophical here, but
No,
I
that's
feel
absolutely fine. I
so.
love these conversations. What's life without poetry and literature, you know?
True,
Every,
true, true.
everything else is just survival.
Yeah, everything else is material, right? So yeah, everything else is just a means to an end, essentially. Yeah, yeah.
So there was this famous thing. So one of my Australian colleagues said, we were speaking, we're just talking, and this guy goes on to see that in Australia it does not matter what car you drive or
Hmm.
uh, what kind of house do you live in. It matters what kind of sport do you play. Everyone will ask that. Uh, I think in Canada it might be something else, but then I think it does
Hmm.
not matter what you do or who you are. Like no one asks me in my lift, elevator, or gym, what's your profession?
Yeah, so true, so true. I totally agree. I've been in this place where I live, and I'm also in a high-rise building, and I meet these people. I met them for 8 or 9 years. They're my neighbors, and we are talking about the weather, or the grocery prices, or something like that. We never try to find out who's doing what, right? And I think people don't are not really interested either. Um, it's funny. Let me give you a little story right here. So we won a huge piece of business in the. So I'm with a ad agency here,
Yeah,
and they picked up a pretty big telecommunications company as a client. It's a big deal. We had to wait for a year to get the decision, and the CMO who was leading the charge was briefing us, onboarding us. Um, put up it's in the onboarding, everybody was talking about themselves and their family and their dog and their cottage, right? That's their life, right? I saw a lot of senior people put up pictures of their spouses, and believe you me, like this is incredible. So one of them said, here's my husband, he's a fireman. Here's my husband who drives a truck. Here's my wife who uh, is head of police force, right? So you realize that the amount of money blue collars make, and the dignity of life for tradespeople, it's a whole different paradigm. I have a friend who's a truck driver. He used to be art director in an agency. 2 years he struggled for a job. He couldn't get one. He started driving trucks. Today he makes $200,000 a year. He is planning to start owning a fleet of trucks. He's cracked it in terms of being happy with something that he's enjoying. So what I'm trying to say is it doesn't matter. And these are people who are very senior in the corporate jobs, but all their spouses are basically out there doing their plumbers and their fire people, and they're all making pretty decent money because there is a higher wage structure for skilled labor. That changes that shifts a little bit, because then when the kids try and do a part-time job at Shoppers Drug Mart or whatever, they realize that यहाँ पे भी $16 मिलेगा, वहाँ पे भी नहीं मिलेगा, so it's minimum wage. Then you realize that, okay, it's about again going back to skilling up in an area where I can add most value. Everything else is just uh, making enough to survive initially. So I think people learn how to do all sorts of jobs here, even mowing lawns or whatever, right? Babysitting, um, dog walking. I'm telling desis,
yeah,
because they realize that, okay, this is the way to do it. You got to be a Canadian to, like, Canadian kids do that growing up. It's not like everybody's parents are rich, but the countries where we grew up in, BCom किया, CA करो, MBA करो, बाहर चले जाओ. It's like, you know opportunity to figure out what really life is about. being in other
Okay.
people's shoes.
I, I think even not that. I feel that a janitor who's making $16 an hour has the same dignity as or same respect as any tech bro or finance bro in this country. I absolutely love the fact.
Yeah, and Sachin, there is you sometimes may think, pause and wonder whether they have a some sort of elitism in this country at all, and there is. So it's not like it doesn't exist. It's the kind of people who we don't interact with, and typically these are they are elitist for not for wealth. They're elitist because of their thoughts and their way of life. So they're the academics, uh, the publishers, the editors, right? People in arts. You will see that they're a little cut above. It's not because they're making huge money, but because they are in their own. They are thinkers essentially, right? They have an opinion. They have an opinion on Trudeau and they have an opinion on immigration, and it's strong opinions. But it's a country which allows freedom of speech, and yet they have a lot to forgive and forget from their own pasts.
So, uh, when you move to Canada, like a lot of young folks who move from India or other parts of the world to Canada, they face something called a Canadian experience barrier. Did you face it when you came in?
So it's illegal now. You know that, right?
Yeah,
48 hours back, the government put out a, I don't know if it's Ontario government or federal government, or
Ontario.
Ontario. They are it is banned to now ask somebody for Canadian experience, which is high time. But to answer your question, yes. So why do you think I was unemployed for those first 4 or 5 months? Right, it was from April to, yeah, 4 or 5 months, because I had the best references from the top agencies of the world. The references were not from my bosses. The references was from the global CEOs. Get that, global CEOs, because they knew who I was. They knew I was migrating. They said, yeah, yeah, stay with the group. We'll find you a position. Go and meet the CEO in Toronto. Nothing. So the Canadians, as we all know, have this fantastic way of saying no. Right? They never say no. They'll meet you, they'll smile, and they will say, "Great and fantastic resume. At this point, we are not sure, but we'll get back to you." So what is happening is this guy doesn't belong to us. He doesn't have Canadian experience. He may be a big dude in Asia, but he really has no consumer insight. He doesn't know how the market works. He doesn't play golf. He doesn't appreciate hockey. ये सब चल रहा है ना मन में.
Yeah.
So they're profiling you and they're saying, yeah, you're not invented. Yeah, yeah, you're not part of our society. I came to that conclusion pretty quickly. So it took me a few months, and I realized I'm chasing the wrong jobs. I'm chasing the wrong job. So yes, they may be those companies. Having said that, Sachin, cut to 10 years later, I would say 7, 8 years later, a lot of kids turning up from India are getting into those agencies. Now you would ask, why is it true for them and what was not true for me, right? So I was 51 when I came. I was already very senior. So they had to find a way to stop me where I was and not just come and. It was a little political, and it's kind of, what are we going to do with this guy? Youngsters can be molded. They fit into roles, they fit into job descriptions. It's a much more digital world. So I think what happens is, like, digital planning and stuff is a level playing field, and nobody can beat Indians, right? So there's no denying that somebody from IMT Ghaziabad or IM or whatever will any day beat anyone from Shulik or any place like that. But that's the reality. So I'm actually really thrilled that the tide has
Tide
changed.
is turning now, or things are. So I
Absolutely.
recently worked with someone in tech, so someone involuntarily. So they were moving to Canada on a
Hmm.
PR, and they were in tech, great profile, everything amazing, but they did not write the impact of their role. So the person, she was a coder, the person was a coder,
Hmm.
uh, working on a payment gateway, but in her resume, she only wrote run of the mill roles and responsibilities. She did not even explain her detailed project that she's doing or the business impact. So I sat with her and told her to write a lot of impact of work that you've done, because I think somewhere I feel that the Indian resumes that are there, they overstate their roles and responsibilities but underplay the impact of the work that they've done.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that. Yeah, you're probably right. I think they don't understand how much. So yeah, typical Indian resume would be all the big brands that you worked with in India, right? It doesn't matter; those brands exist here. Nobody gets impressed with a
Yeah.
Nestle or a Unilever, but frankly, Unilever is not that great here anyway because it's all handled out of US. But the point really is, yeah, you're right. People resume writing is such an art. If you do not actually convince people that you're going to make a difference, why would they hire you? You're absolutely right. So I think it's something that it's a skill people need to learn when they come, and I'm sure there's help available. But someone like you who's mentoring somebody can easily see through that. And 9 times out of 10, any fresh resume out of India is like that. It could be 5 pages long as well sometimes, but there's nothing you can focus on.
Mm. So they don't understand. I mean, I feel that they don't understand the fact that people, the first person who is looking at your resume might not understand your line of work really well. So you need to convince the gatekeeper first before getting an interview with the hiring manager or something.
But even to get to the gatekeeper, your resume needs to go through all these algorithms just set
Yeah,
up to
algorithms. Yeah.
screen you out, right? So yeah, so you have to use the right language, the right terminology to be even get shortlisted. So resume writing is you can make a lot of money if you're a really good resume writer and help people in this country.
I think ChatGPT is going to take jobs of a lot of people who write resumes. Let's see how it goes.
100%.
Someone who's a 30-year-old who's planning to come to Canada, now what changes in your advice?
Yeah, so I feel that there are two ways to look at it. I think people who realize that here's a country which is taking 500,000 immigrants a year, stated policy,
Yeah.
of which maybe
Of,
70,
of what
80%.
they can count. They are not able to count all of them.
Yes, correct. But this is the PRs they're willing to give in a year, as
Yeah.
you know. So, of which maybe 60, 70% are going to be from one country, right? And as has been the trend. So, people come from small towns in India, right? People are struggling. They know what the limitations are. Unless you move to Mumbai or Delhi, you're not going to get into those big jobs. You're coming straight out of a small town. You have the opportunity to come straight up, right? And you probably have some friends or some relatives again. I would actually say it depends on the mental ability of that person. So if obviously there are some sectors like tech for sure, it's a no-brainer. I think I still feel, and maybe they're not as many jobs as one would like. Don't know exactly if that digital corridor is still going to be built. They keep talking about a lot of stuff will happen in Toronto. It never happened. Google didn't open its, Amazon didn't open its headquarters here. They wanted to have a second headquarters. So what I'm trying to say is there needs to be a game plan to actually say, okay, these skills will help me through, let's say, the first 2 or 3 years, and I think people will land jobs. I think the trouble is right after that, because what happens is layoffs happen. Like even if you're with a bank and suddenly, I mean, somebody I know was with one of the big banks and they got laid off 20 years of being in this country, and they've still got mortgages to pay. So I think at some stage people will have to realize that they have to be entrepreneurial. So yes, there are a lot of folks who are ready to do second jobs, but I'm talking about actually working for yourself. So not easy concept, but I'm saying that there is a statistic. I think it is above 70% of Canadians are self-employed. There's actually a real statistic like that. What that basically means is that you want to be flexible. and not be dependent on the whims and fancies for corporation, that you lay off a bunch of people and take in cheaper ones. So I think you got to get that sort of critical mass of experience, prove yourself, and then try and do it yourself. Easier said than done, but I think people in consulting roles where you don't need an army of people, but you actually need to just understand either software, or you understand systems, or you understand in the case of telecommunication, it's sheer knowledge of what how telcos work. You notice I'm not talking about advertising at all, because I feel that their personalities matter.
Yep.
So a lot of people come in, and by sheer force of their personality, they survive and they do well because they're creative people. You have to be very entrepreneurial by design. you every day is you have to selling. Either you're selling yourself or you're selling your client's product. So I think for people like that with that sort of bent of mind and skill, it's a fabulous place.